"Grandpa John, why do you not live here with us?" Ethan asked with wide curious eyes as the morning sunlight poured through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow across the table filled with a homemade birthday cake, colorful balloons, and neatly wrapped presents. John smiled softly, feeling a mix of surprise and nostalgia, his white hair catching the light and his gentle eyes reflecting decades of memories. He shifted in his chair, remembering birthdays past when he had celebrated alone or only with distant family, the laughter and chatter from his children feeling absent as life had taken him on a separate path. Today, everything was different yet familiar. The smell of fresh pancakes and brewed coffee filled the room, and for a moment John allowed himself to be fully present. Ethan bounced slightly on his chair, excitedly showing John the card he had made, carefully drawing stick figures and hearts with bright crayons. John reached out to touch the paper, marveling at the innocence and honesty of his grandson's expression, the colors vibrant and unrestrained, reminding him of simpler days he remembered playing with toys on the living room carpet decades ago with his own children, the feeling of time slipping away mixing with the warmth of current moments, creating a bittersweet symphony in his heart. The morning continued with Ethan pointing out small details on the table, the way the napkins were folded, the little candles on the cake, and John listened intently, noticing how much care had gone into every small thing. It was these tiny acts of love that made the day extraordinary, and yet John's mind wandered briefly to the distance that had grown between him and his family, the missed dinners, the phone calls that came too late, and the fleeting visits he had cherished, but never enough to fill the emptiness he felt. He watched Ethan's eyes sparkle as he laughed over a story about a toy car and a small model dinosaur. John laughed too, realizing the sound was lighter than he remembered, and the joy was contagious. The kitchen seemed to shrink around them, amplifying the sense of closeness despite the outside world. The sun climbed higher, making the light sharper and brighter, warming the room and highlighting the gentle lines of John's face, each crease telling a story of years lived fully but sometimes apart from those he loved most. Ethan leaned forward, asking more questions about why John had moved away and how he had spent the time living alone, and John found himself answering with honesty yet framed in gentle words, careful to convey warmth and understanding. He described small adventures and quiet evenings, emphasizing the lessons learned and the unexpected joys found along the way. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter, smiles, and the occasional pause as they both reflected on the significance of the day and the importance of presence. John felt a surge of gratitude, realizing that despite the distance, time, and choices, they were here together now, sharing the light, the sounds, and the simple joy of being a family. Ethan's enthusiasm and openness reminded him that connections could always be renewed, and the small moments of today would become cherished memories for both of them. He promised himself to embrace these opportunities more fully in the future and to be more present in Ethan's life. The day had just begun, and already it felt like a celebration, not only of John's birthday but of the deep bond between grandfather and grandson. The love present in the room was palpable and filled John with a sense of peace, anticipation, and quiet happiness, knowing that moments like this defined what truly mattered in life. After the morning laughter settled into a comfortable rhythm, John found himself reflecting on the quiet moments that defined his life outside of this lively household. The sunlight had shifted slightly, casting long warm shadows across the kitchen floor, highlighting the details of the room where every object seemed to tell a story, from the worn wooden table to the colorful placemats that Ethan had chosen the night before. John sipped his coffee, savoring the aroma and the taste, feeling the familiar warmth spread through his chest, a sense of calm grounding him in the present. He thought about the books lined neatly on the shelves, each spine a reminder of years spent reading, exploring, and learning, the knowledge and experiences that had shaped him into the man Ethan adored today. He glanced at the framed photographs on the walls, capturing decades of birthdays, vacations, and everyday life frozen in a single frame. He recognized faces of family, friends, and neighbors, all who had played a role in his journey, yet the spaces between those memories reminded him of the distance he had maintained out of necessity or circumstance. The day stretched on slowly as John decided to take a walk outside. The crisp winter air greeted him as he stepped into the small garden behind the house. The scent of pine and freshly fallen leaves mingled with the faint aroma of cookies cooling on the kitchen counter. He watched the frost glisten on the grass like tiny diamonds under the bright sunlight and felt the cold nipping gently at his cheeks. He noticed the footprints Ethan had left earlier, running across the snow, tracing chaotic paths of play and exploration. John smiled, remembering his own children doing the same when they were young. The thought brought a warmth that contrasted with the cold air. As he walked, he thought about the traditions that had been maintained over the years and the ones he had missed. The quiet hum of the neighborhood around him offered a soothing backdrop, the distant Sound of a dog barking, the occasional car passing by, and the soft whisper of wind through the trees created a serene atmosphere that allowed him to process his emotions freely. He continued along the path, noticing the small details: a red cardinal perched on a low branch, the way the sunlight reflected off icicles hanging delicately from the roofline, the subtle crunch of snow under his shoes, each moment rich with sensory information grounding him further in the here and now. John paused to take a deep breath, inhaling the fresh air and appreciating the vitality of life around him. A sense of gratitude washed over him for having this time with Ethan, for the laughter shared and the questions asked that opened his mind to reflection and introspection. He realized that these small slices of life were in fact monumental in shaping his perspective, and that being present even in the simplest moments was a gift he had learned to cherish over the years. With renewed energy, John returned inside to find Ethan building a small tower from wooden blocks, laughter spilling freely as each piece wobbled and fell and was rebuilt again. John knelt beside him, engaging in the activity, allowing himself to experience the joy and curiosity of youth from a new perspective. The connection was tangible, a silent understanding that these moments were the glue of familial bonds and the foundation of memories that would last long after the birthday candles had been blown out. The afternoon light softened, streaming through the windows, casting a golden hue over the room and creating an ambience of warmth and security. John felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that in sharing these moments with Ethan he was contributing to a legacy of love, care and presence that would shape his grandson's understanding of family for years to come. He promised himself silently to continue nurturing this bond, embracing each opportunity to be fully present and attentive, fully aware that the simple acts of listening, laughing and engaging were more meaningful than any grand gesture, and that this day was a testament to the enduring power of family love and connection that would be carried forward in both their hearts. As the afternoon unfolded, John watched Ethan with a quiet fascination, noting the way his grandson's eyes sparkled with curiosity and wonder, the small hands moving decisively yet delicately as he arranged toy trains and miniature furniture into a carefully orchestrated scene. The living room filled with a mixture of laughter and the soft tapping sounds of wood and plastic, creating a rhythm that was both comforting and energizing. John reflected on how these moments were fleeting and yet so impactful. The way Ethan asked questions about everything from why the sun set to how birds could sing so beautifully reminded John of the endless possibilities of learning and discovery that childhood offered. He marveled at the patience he found within himself to answer each inquiry thoroughly, ensuring that Ethan understood and felt valued in the process. They moved from the living room to the kitchen, where the smell of freshly baked cookies mingled with the faint scent of pine from the small indoor tree placed carefully near the window. John encouraged Ethan to help arrange the plates and cups, explaining in detail why each action mattered and how it contributed to a harmonious environment. Ethan listened attentively, nodding eagerly at each instruction and occasionally asking for clarification about why some items went in one place and others elsewhere. John smiled internally, appreciating not only the level of focus Ethan displayed but also the willingness to engage in tasks that involved responsibility and care. As they worked together, John reminisced about his own childhood and the lessons he had learned about diligence, patience, and the importance of family connections. He considered how these experiences shaped his values and how he now had the opportunity to pass those lessons on to Ethan in a way that was both practical and nurturing. After setting up the table, they sat together enjoying a small snack, the conversation flowing naturally from one topic to another, from stories about John's early school days to hypothetical questions Ethan posed about imaginary adventures and the kinds of heroes he admired. John found himself balancing factual explanations with imaginative elaborations, ensuring the dialogue remained stimulating yet grounded in a sense of reality and comprehension. The clock ticked steadily in the background, marking the passage of time unnoticed as they delved into discussions about nature, history, and the various family traditions that had persisted across generations. John noticed the way Ethan's expressions changed with each topic, a mixture of awe, surprise, and delight that reminded him of the value of cultivating a sense of wonder in daily life. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow through the windows, the warmth of the room seemed to mirror the emotional warmth between the two generations. John took a moment to pause, observing Ethan's focused concentration and the occasional bursts of laughter when something particularly amusing occurred. The simplicity of these interactions belied the depth of connection being formed, a bond that would endure beyond birthdays, holidays, and fleeting moments of routine. John reflected that teaching through example and engagement was far more effective than mere instruction, and that the shared experience created memories that would be cherished long into the future. He resolved silently to continue this pattern of mindful participation, being present fully for each story, question and exploration that Ethan initiated, knowing that the impact would ripple through both their lives, shaping perspectives, values, and appreciation for the small yet profound joys of family life. The evening approached slowly, bringing with it a sense of calm reflection and contentment. As they finished tidying the kitchen and preparing for the next activity, John felt a quiet pride in the resilience, curiosity, and kindness that Ethan displayed, and recognized the importance of nurturing these qualities with patience, understanding, and encouragement. He understood that these moments were foundational to a life rich with love, connection, and meaningful engagement, a gift he could provide and one that Ethan would carry forward in his own journey through life, creating a continuous legacy of learning, growth, and familial bonds that transcended time and circumstance. John glanced at the calendar on the wall, noting that his birthday was only a few days away. A subtle excitement bubbled within him, mixed with a hint of melancholy, as he reflected on past celebrations and the family members who had come and gone over the years. He remembered vividly the laughter, the cake, the songs, and the warm embraces that marked each previous year, yet a certain emptiness lingered at the edges of those memories, a question that had never been voiced aloud but now hovered in his mind like a gentle shadow. As he sipped his coffee at the kitchen table, Ethan entered, carrying a small notebook in his hands, eyes bright with anticipation. He approached John hesitantly yet confidently, asking questions about the day they had spent together earlier that morning. John encouraged the curiosity, guiding Ethan through explanations about measurement, time, and the reasoning behind various household tasks. Their conversation flowed seamlessly, blending practical instruction with imaginative scenarios. John watched carefully, noting the moments when Ethan's eyebrows furrowed in deep thought and the way his lips curved into a smile when understanding dawned. He realized that these interactions were not only teaching moments but also windows into Ethan's developing personality and worldview. He felt a sense of pride, knowing that the patience and attention he offered were shaping a young mind in positive ways. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, casting warm golden hues across the living room and kitchen, creating a serene backdrop for their dialogue. John suggested they take a walk in the nearby park, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of pine and freshly cut grass inviting them outside. The simple act of stepping into nature provided an opportunity for reflection and conversation. Ethan eagerly accepted the idea, gathering his small jacket and hat while asking questions about the birds, the trees, and the changing colors of the leaves. John responded with explanations suitable for a 7-year-old, emphasizing observation and curiosity. He encouraged Ethan to notice the small details, from the way the light hit the branches to the patterns in the clouds floating lazily across the sky. As they strolled down the winding paths, John shared stories from his own childhood adventures, the moments of learning and discovery that had shaped him and the values he had come to hold dear. Ethan listened intently, occasionally interrupting with questions or observations that reflected both humor and insight. The interplay between storytelling and inquiry created a dynamic rhythm that kept both engaged and emotionally connected. As they approached a small pond, John prompted Ethan to consider the reflections on the water and how perception could change depending on perspective. Ethan eagerly knelt down, observing the subtle ripples, and John guided him to think about cause and effect. The learning moment was immersive and memorable, blending sensory experience with cognitive growth. They continued along the path, visiting small clusters of flowers, examining their shapes, colors, and textures. John explained pollination seasons and the role each organism played in the larger ecosystem. Ethan responded with fascination, connecting each fact to his imaginative stories about tiny explorers and miniature kingdoms thriving within the natural world. The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows and bathing the park in soft, warm light. John and Ethan paused on a small bench, taking in the scene, the gentle breeze, rustling leaves, and distant laughter from other families, creating a calm and reflective atmosphere. John felt a deep sense of connection not only to his grandson but to the continuity of family and learning. The experiences they shared would be woven into memories that would last a lifetime, offering both guidance and inspiration. The walk back home was filled with quiet conversation, punctuated by laughter and thoughtful observations. As they returned to the familiar comfort of the house, John reflected that these moments of shared attention, curiosity, and engagement were foundational. They provided structure, warmth, and emotional resonance, building the framework for a relationship characterized by understanding, love, and mutual respect. As the evening settled and the house was filled with a warm glow from the lamps casting gentle light across the living room, John and Ethan moved to the dining area where a small table was set up with paper, crayons, and craft supplies. Ethan's eyes lit up with excitement, immediately choosing bright colors, while John watched with quiet amusement and encouragement. He joined in the crafting activity, guiding Ethan to think about shapes, patterns, and symmetry as they created drawings that depicted scenes from their day. The laughter and chatter flowed naturally, filling the room with a sense of shared joy and creativity. John noticed how Ethan carefully considered each stroke of color and shape, asking questions that revealed his curiosity and growing understanding of artistic expression. They discussed the importance of patience and attention to detail, and John subtly introduced concepts like measurement, comparison, and proportion, relating them to both art and everyday experiences outside the craft project. The aroma of dinner began to fill the house, signaling that it was nearly time to eat. John suggested they start preparing the meal together, giving Ethan simple tasks like washing vegetables and arranging ingredients. This involvement allowed Ethan to feel a sense of responsibility and contribution while learning practical skills. The kitchen became a lively place full of movement, the clinking of utensils, and gentle conversation. John explained each step with care, from chopping safely to understanding cooking times and flavors, emphasizing the joy of participation rather than perfection. Ethan's curiosity extended to asking about spices, herbs, and the science behind cooking reactions, and John took the opportunity to answer with clarity and examples that were accessible yet informative. As the meal came together, the table was set, and John encouraged Ethan to help with final touches, placing napkins, utensils, and decorations, creating a small festive atmosphere. Despite the ordinary setting, they sat down to eat, discussing the day, the projects they completed, and the plans for the following week. Each bite was accompanied by stories, anecdotes, and light-hearted observations. John was attentive to Ethan's responses, noticing the enthusiasm in his eyes, the small gestures of independence, and the pride he took in contributing to the meal. The conversation naturally drifted to past birthdays, family traditions, and memories. John shared heartfelt stories about his own experiences growing up, the lessons he had learned, and the values he cherished. Ethan listened with wide-eyed fascination, occasionally interjecting with thoughtful questions or comments that revealed his understanding and imagination. The evening moved gently forward with the completion of dinner and the clearing of the table. John and Ethan transitioned to a quiet activity, reading books together in the soft glow of a nearby lamp. They explored stories filled with adventure, imagination, and life lessons. John used these moments to encourage critical thinking, empathy, and reflection, asking Ethan about his thoughts, feelings, and predictions about the story's characters and outcomes. This engagement nurtured both cognitive and emotional growth, blending learning and bonding seamlessly. As bedtime approached, Ethan yawned, stretching and rubbing his eyes. John guided him through a calming routine, brushing teeth, putting on pajamas, and choosing a bedtime story. The rituals provided structure, security, and comfort, fostering a sense of stability and love. The day concluded with John tucking Ethan into bed, sharing gentle words of encouragement and affection, emphasizing the importance of curiosity, kindness, and family connection. As he turned off the light, he reflected on the day's experiences, realizing that the small shared moments, conversation, laughter, and learning were creating lasting bonds and meaningful memories that would remain with both of them, offering warmth, joy, and guidance that extended beyond the ordinary into the extraordinary fabric of family life. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, filling the living room with a warm glow. John and Ethan moved slowly as they prepared for the day, with a sense of calm anticipation. John suggested they begin with a morning walk in the neighborhood park to enjoy fresh air, observe nature, and engage in light physical activity. Ethan eagerly agreed, grabbing his small backpack filled with essentials. As they stepped outside, the crisp morning air greeted them, carrying the scent of dew-covered grass and blooming flowers along the sidewalk. They greeted neighbors passing by, exchanging friendly words and smiles, creating a sense of community and connection. John pointed out interesting birds, insects, and plants along the path, explaining their habits, functions, and significance in a way that was engaging and informative. Ethan listened attentively, asking questions that reflected his curiosity and desire to understand the world around him. They paused at the park's small pond, watching ducks glide across the water, and discussed concepts like movement patterns, reflections, and symmetry. John encouraged Ethan to make observations and comparisons, fostering analytical thinking and attention to detail. After a peaceful walk, they returned home, where John suggested a creative project involving building a simple model using household materials. He guided Ethan through the steps from measuring, cutting, assembling, and decorating. Each step included explanations about shapes, proportions, and balance. Emphasizing problem-solving skills and perseverance, Ethan carefully followed instructions, sometimes improvising with his ideas under John's supportive guidance. They celebrated each small accomplishment, reinforcing a sense of achievement and confidence. As the project concluded, John introduced a science experiment that demonstrated cause and effect using safe and readily available materials. Ethan observed reactions with wide-eyed fascination and noted the changes, recording observations as John prompted him to predict outcomes and analyze results, highlighting scientific thinking and logical reasoning. During lunchtime, they worked together to prepare simple sandwiches and snacks. John used this opportunity to teach nutrition basics and healthy choices, explaining portions, food groups, and balance. Ethan actively participated in arranging ingredients and making selections, practicing independence and decision-making. The conversation flowed naturally from meal preparation to sharing stories about their families and past experiences. John recounted amusing incidents and meaningful lessons from his own childhood, and Ethan responded with thoughtful reflections, connecting the stories to his own experiences. The afternoon was dedicated to reading an imaginative play where John encouraged Ethan to invent stories, characters, and scenarios using props and toys. The exercise promoted creativity, language development, and emotional expression. They acted out scenarios, explored problem-solving strategies, and discussed character motivations and outcomes, reinforcing empathy and moral reasoning. As the day drew on, John suggested a quiet activity of journaling, where Ethan drew pictures and wrote simple sentences about his day, reflecting on feelings, events, and discoveries. This practice nurtured self-expression, reflection, and literacy skills. The evening brought preparation for dinner, with Ethan assisting in simple tasks under John's supervision, fostering responsibility and practical life skills. They enjoyed a relaxed meal together, sharing stories and observations from the day, reinforcing communication skills and family bonding. As bedtime approached, John guided Ethan through the nightly routine, brushing teeth, putting on pajamas, and choosing a bedtime story, emphasizing structure, consistency, and comfort. The day concluded with a sense of accomplishment, connection, and warmth. As Ethan drifted to sleep, John reflected on the meaningful interactions, the learning experiences, and the deepening bond that each shared activity fostered, building a foundation of trust, curiosity, and mutual respect that would continue to grow and enrich their lives. The following morning, John and Ethan woke to the gentle sound of birds singing outside their window, creating a calm and inviting atmosphere. As sunlight filtered softly through light curtains, they began the day with a shared breakfast, preparing oatmeal, fresh fruit, and juice. While discussing the plans for the day, John encouraged Ethan to take initiative, pouring cereal and stirring ingredients, demonstrating practical skills and fostering confidence. Ethan took pride in contributing, offering suggestions about flavor combinations and portion sizes, reinforcing independence and decision-making. The conversation naturally flowed to reflections on yesterday's activities, highlighting what they had learned and enjoyed, setting a positive tone for continued engagement. After breakfast, they decided to tackle a home organization project, starting with sorting books, toys, and art supplies. John guided Ethan in categorizing items by type and size, explaining concepts such as orderliness and efficiency, and emphasizing the satisfaction that comes from completing tasks together. Ethan listened attentively, following instructions, while also sharing ideas for organizing certain areas, creating a collaborative environment that balanced guidance and creativity. As they worked, John introduced a playful challenge by timing how long it took to complete certain tasks and encouraging Ethan to beat his own times, reinforcing motivation, goal setting, and healthy competition. They celebrated progress with small rewards such as stickers or extra story time, enhancing enjoyment and positive reinforcement. Mid-morning, they transitioned to a creative activity, designing handmade greeting cards using colored paper, markers, and embellishments. John explained principles of color theory, balance, and symmetry, and encouraged Ethan to express emotions and messages through his designs. Ethan experimented with different patterns, shapes, and combinations, developing artistic skills and self-expression. They shared stories about past holidays, birthdays, and special moments, connecting memories to their creative work, reinforcing narrative thinking and emotional reflection. Before lunch, John suggested a nature walk to observe seasonal changes and practice mindfulness, taking the opportunity to point out different types of leaves, flowers, and insects, and encouraging Ethan to notice sounds, textures, and patterns. They discussed ecological concepts in simple terms and the importance of caring for the environment. Enhancing scientific curiosity and environmental awareness, Ethan asked questions and made observations that reflected his growing attentiveness and analytical skills. Returning home, they prepared a light lunch together, practicing food safety, hygiene, and cooperation while sharing thoughts about the morning's experiences, strengthening communication skills and family bonding. The afternoon was devoted to a combination of reading comprehension and imaginative play. John selected a chapter from a favorite book and guided Ethan in reading aloud, taking turns discussing plot predictions, character motivations, and possible endings. They analyzed cause and effect, relationships, and moral lessons while also acting out favorite scenes using props, enhancing comprehension, empathy, and creativity. Afterward, they played a collaborative building game using blocks and connectors, focusing on teamwork, problem-solving, and planning skills. Each structure was examined for stability and design considerations. John encouraged Ethan to reflect on what worked well and how to improve designs, reinforcing critical thinking, patience, and persistence. As evening approached, John and Ethan prepared dinner together, selecting ingredients, measuring quantities, and following step-by-step instructions, discussing nutritional content and healthy choices. They enjoyed the meal at the table, sharing highlights from the day, discussing achievements, challenges, and personal reflections, fostering a sense of security and belonging. Before bedtime, John guided Ethan through a calming routine, including brushing teeth, selecting pajamas, and reading a short story together, emphasizing consistency and relaxation. As Ethan settled into bed, he felt a sense of accomplishment, connection, and warmth from the day. John reflected on the continued growth of trust, curiosity, and mutual respect, the structured activities, shared responsibilities, and open communication, fostering a strong foundation for future learning, exploration, and emotional development. As the morning sun cast a warm glow over the backyard, John and Ethan embarked on a hands-on science experiment designed to spark curiosity and practical problem-solving. John had prepared materials for a small water filtration project, including gravel, sand-activated charcoal, and clear plastic bottles, explaining the scientific principles behind filtration and the importance of clean water in daily life. Ethan listened attentively and asked thoughtful questions while setting up the layers with careful precision, experimenting with different sequences and observing how water changed clarity and flow during each trial. John encouraged Ethan to record his observations and make predictions, reinforcing skills in documentation, analysis, and critical thinking. They discussed real-world applications of filtration systems and how communities around the world rely on them, enhancing global awareness and empathy for others. The activity naturally transitioned into a discussion about environmental responsibility and conservation. John guided Ethan in brainstorming ways to reduce water waste and reuse resources at home, encouraging small changes that could make a big difference. Ethan contributed ideas enthusiastically, such as collecting rainwater for plants and turning off taps when not in use. They set up a simple monitoring chart to track water usage throughout the week, combining accountability with fun and reinforcing the impact of conscious choices. Mid-morning, they moved to an outdoor art project, painting large cardboard canvases with vibrant acrylic colors and textured materials. John demonstrated blending techniques, layering, and creating depth while encouraging Ethan to experiment with his own style and self-expression. Ethan explored color combinations and abstract patterns, reflecting his imagination and growing confidence. John emphasized the importance of process over perfection, celebrating creativity and personal interpretation. They discussed symbolism in art and how different colors and shapes can convey emotions and stories, reinforcing observational and interpretive skills. Before lunch, John suggested a nature scavenger hunt around the garden and neighborhood, highlighting seasonal changes, flora and fauna. Ethan followed a checklist while identifying leaves, flowers, insects, and birds. John explained ecological relationships such as pollination and food chains using accessible language that encouraged curiosity and understanding. Ethan recorded his findings in a notebook, adding sketches and notes that strengthened both scientific observation and fine motor skills. The scavenger hunt concluded with a reflection session where Ethan shared what fascinated him most and John provided positive feedback and further explanations, deepening comprehension and appreciation for natural systems. After a healthy lunch featuring sandwiches, fresh vegetables, and fruit, they engaged in a collaborative storytelling exercise. John provided story prompts and encouraged Ethan to create characters, settings, and plot developments, fostering narrative skills, creativity, and sequential thinking. Ethan developed a short tale about a heroic animal helping friends solve problems, enhancing imagination and empathy while discussing cause and effect and consequences. They performed a read aloud of the story, practicing expressive reading and dialogue intonation, which enhanced communication and confidence in public speaking. The afternoon included a practical mathematics activity, baking simple cookies from scratch. John guided Ethan in measuring ingredients, calculating proportions, and timing baking intervals, reinforcing arithmetic, fractions, and logical sequencing. Ethan actively participated, measuring flour, sugar, and butter, mixing dough, and setting timers. They enjoyed the fruits of their labor, sharing cookies and discussing results, connecting practical life skills with mathematical concepts. As evening approached, they participated in a calming yoga and stretching session, focusing on mindful breathing, relaxation, and body awareness. John explained the benefits of exercise for both mental and physical health. Ethan followed instructions and reflected on how movement and mindfulness contributed to overall well-being. The day concluded with quiet reading time, where Ethan chose a favorite book and John read alongside, providing explanations and encouraging predictions, reinforcing comprehension, patience, and concentration. Before bedtime, Ethan expressed satisfaction and contentment, reflecting on a day filled with learning, exploration, and shared experiences, while John noted the steady development of curiosity, resilience, and thoughtful engagement. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across the backyard, John and Ethan settled into a comfortable spot on a picnic blanket, surrounded by the soft hum of nature and the faint aroma of evening flowers. John brought out a small journal and asked Ethan to reflect on the past week of activities they had shared together. Ethan eagerly opened the journal and began recounting moments from their science experiments, art projects, nature explorations, and storytelling sessions, highlighting what he had learned, what surprised him, and what he enjoyed the most. John listened attentively, providing gentle guidance and encouragement, emphasizing the growth he observed in Ethan's curiosity, critical thinking, and emotional awareness. They discussed practical applications of what Ethan had learned, including how observation skills could help in everyday problem solving and how creativity could be applied to school projects and personal hobbies. John asked open-ended questions, prompting Ethan to think about how he might share his knowledge with friends or family, reinforcing communication skills and confidence. As they talked, they noticed the first stars appearing in the sky, sparking a discussion about astronomy, constellations, and the vastness of the universe. John explained concepts like light years, planets, and galaxies in simple terms that Ethan could grasp, encouraging wonder and exploration. Ethan sketched a few constellations in his journal and wrote down questions he hoped to explore further during future stargazing evenings. Afterward, John proposed a gentle evening walk along the neighborhood paths lined with trees and blooming flowers. They observed nocturnal insects and listened to the sounds of crickets, frogs, and distant owls. John highlighted the importance of being mindful of the environment and the ways ecosystems are interconnected. Ethan practiced identifying different sounds and tracking patterns in nature, further enhancing observational skills and attentiveness. Returning home, they prepared a simple dinner together, with John guiding Ethan in chopping vegetables, measuring ingredients, and understanding nutrition while reinforcing teamwork and responsibility. Ethan took pride in plating the meal creatively and describing what each component contributed to health and energy. After dinner, they participated in a quiet reflection activity where Ethan shared his thoughts and feelings about the day. John encouraged him to acknowledge accomplishments and express gratitude, reinforcing emotional intelligence and mindfulness. They concluded the day with a calming reading ritual, selecting a favorite book to read together. John demonstrated expressive reading techniques and encouraged Ethan to predict story outcomes and reflect on character motivations. Ethan eagerly engaged with the story, asking questions and making connections to his own experiences. As bedtime approached, John helped Ethan organize his room and settle into a comfortable sleeping position, emphasizing routine and the importance of rest for growth and learning. Ethan reflected on the week, feeling accomplished, inspired, and connected to both John and the world around him. As he drifted off to sleep with a sense of curiosity, anticipation, and a desire to explore further, John quietly reviewed the week himself, noting the significant development in Ethan's cognitive, emotional, and social abilities, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment in nurturing his grandson's growth and fostering a lasting bond built on shared learning experiences, trust, and mutual respect.